Look, my dear listener, I have been giving consultations for over 30 years, and today I want to share something with you that very few professionals ever dare to say out loud. This is not a rumor. It's not an opinion. It's a combination of observation, clinical experience, and solid neuroscience. What I am about to reveal has the power to completely change the way you see male intimacy. It will also change the way you see yourself in the moments that follow. We live surrounded by romantic myths. We grew up watching movies, reading books, and listening to songs that describe love and intimacy as one smooth continuum, like two people melting into a perfect, eternal embrace. According to those stories, the moment after intimacy is the most romantic moment of all. The man supposedly lies there gazing at the woman, thinking about how she might be the one, feeling an instant rush of devotion and connection. That image has been repeated so often that many of us take it as an unshakable truth. But in my office, where real people sit across from me and tell me their real stories, the picture looks completely different. When I listen to women in tears saying, "Why did he become distant right after? Why didn't he call the next day? Wasn't it beautiful for him too?" I realize just how damaging those myths can be. They set up expectations that are almost guaranteed to break your heart. Let's begin dismantling the biggest myth. After intimacy, women often assume men are lying there thinking about them, replaying the experience, analyzing whether they are soulmates, and feeling the emotional depth of the encounter. But the male brain simply does not operate that way in the immediate aftermath. That doesn't mean men are cold or incapable of feeling. It means their neurochemistry and evolutionary programming make them process those moments differently. Here is what the science actually says. Right after orgasm, a man's prolactin levels spike dramatically, up to 5 times their normal baseline. Prolactin is the hormone responsible for that heavy feeling of satisfaction and fatigue. Think about how you feel after a huge holiday meal. You're not excited to go running or start deep philosophical conversations. You just want to rest, to drift off. That's exactly what happens in the male brain. The body is switching from arousal to recovery, from high tension to release. That's why so many men fall asleep or go mentally blank. It's not personal. It's not because they didn't enjoy being with you. It's pure biology. Their nervous system is literally recalibrating itself after a very intense neurochemical surge. Understanding this alone can spare you a lot of pain and self-doubt. But here is where it gets truly fascinating. While his body relaxes, his subconscious mind begins an entirely different process, something you cannot see but which determines much of what happens afterward. Deep in the more primitive layers of his brain, what some call the reptilian brain, an evaluation begins. He is not aware of it consciously, but this evaluation can decide whether the encounter brings him closer to you or pushes him away. Over decades of working with couples, I've seen how powerful this unconscious evaluation can be. Let me tell you about Patricia, a patient who came to me at 48 years old. She had been dating a man for 6 months. Everything seemed beautiful and promising. They finally became intimate. She was thrilled. She thought, now we'll be closer. Now we'll move forward. Yet within days, he began to distance himself. Calls became sporadic. Warmth cooled. She sat in my office crying, saying, "Doctor, what happened?" He said all these wonderful things that night. I explained to her that men do not process intimacy as a romantic love experience in the same way women do. For many men, the reptilian brain makes a kind of survival-based assessment. Without realizing it, it asks, is this woman still a challenge? Or have I already conquered her? Was this valuable or simply too easily available? This is not about your worth as a human being. It is not about whether you are good enough. It's about ancient wiring. Men are biologically programmed to value what they must invest effort in, to feel a surge of dopamine when they achieve something rare or challenging. It's primitive, yes. It's unfair, yes. But ignoring it won't make it disappear. At this point, many women think the solution is to play games, to become hard to get. But that's not what I'm saying at all. Games and manipulation eventually backfire. The key is not pretending to be autonomous, but actually becoming autonomous. Living from a place of inner abundance, not neediness. Let me give you an example of how powerful this shift can be. Marisol, another patient, came to me devastated because every relationship followed the same pattern. At first, the man was interested. Then, after intimacy, the interest faded. I taught her a simple principle. After intimacy, show emotional completeness, not neediness. Don't cling. Don't fish for compliments. Don't project expectations. Simply enjoy the moment and return to your life. Weeks later, she came back glowing. "Doctor," she said, "since I stopped waiting for him to validate me after sex, he's been much more loving and attentive. He even told me he respects me more." Why did this work? Because she showed emotional autonomy. The rare quality the male brain deeply respects. She communicated without words. "I am here because I choose to be, not because I need to be." But beware, autonomy is not coldness. An autonomous woman can still be warm, affectionate, and loving. The difference is she is not acting from fear. She's not trying to secure a promise or control an outcome. She enjoys intimacy for what it is, not for what she hopes it will guarantee. This brings us to one of the most misunderstood aspects of male psychology. Men process intimate experiences emotionally, but with a delay. Women often want to talk right away, to verbalize feelings, to solidify the emotional bond immediately. Men, on the other hand, enter what I call physiological recovery mode. Their dopamine, which was sky high during arousal, plummets. Their prolactin spikes. Their nervous system moves from high alert to deep relaxation. During this phase, they often appear distant or emotionally flat. Yet about 12 to 24 hours later, something interesting happens. As their hormones normalize, their brain begins to process the emotional content of the experience. They start to feel the connection more deeply. This is why some men seem more affectionate the next day rather than immediately after. But for that delayed emotional process to unfold positively, the seeds planted right after the experience matter. And those seeds are not declarations of love or urgent questions about the future. They are signals of your own inner fullness, your own sense of value. If you plant desperation, you grow distance. If you plant autonomy, you grow respect and desire. Before you become intimate with someone, ask yourself a crucial question. Am I doing this because I truly desire him, or because I need validation, closeness, or proof of my worth? If the answer reveals hidden needs, pause. Sex should never be a tool to fill an emotional void. When you enter intimacy from neediness, you set yourself up for pain. Carmen, 52, another patient of mine, learned this lesson the hard way. Every relationship followed the same script. Quick intimacy, emotional clinging, and then the man's retreat. In therapy, we discovered she was using sex to force closeness, believing that physical intimacy would secure emotional commitment. It never worked. I taught her this simple but profound truth. If you love out of neediness, you transmit neediness. If you love out of fullness, you transmit value. Over time, she learned to delay intimacy until she felt genuinely autonomous. Her entire experience of relationships changed. You see, aside from the physical recovery, a man's subconscious is making an unconscious evaluation. Did this experience increase my sense of connection and admiration, or did it trigger warning signals? That evaluation depends more on your emotional state than on anything else. Not on your body, not on performance, but on whether you remain anchored in your own worth. Men unconsciously assess three things after intimacy. First, whether you maintain your essence. Were you independent, confident, and fulfilled before sex? Do you remain that way after? Second, whether you treat sex as an exchange for commitment, or as a natural expression of desire. Third, whether your self-worth appears intact regardless of his reaction. When you remain grounded, you trigger respect. When you become needy, you trigger instinctive retreat. This is not about playing games. It's about living from a core of authenticity, so strong that intimacy does not throw you off center. Neuroplasticity shows us something hopeful. You can train your brain to respond differently in these moments. Every time you maintain your composure after intimacy, you strengthen the neural pathways of autonomy and weaken those of emotional dependence. With practice, it becomes easier and more natural to radiate calm and self-assurance instead of anxiety. And this leads to one of the deepest truths I've learned in all my years of listening to men and women. A woman's value does not decrease after intimacy, yet many women act as if it does. They unconsciously shift from confident and alluring to anxious and self-doubting. They begin to seek proof that they are still wanted. But this very shift undermines the attraction they had built. If you take one message from this first part, let it be this. Sex should be an expression of your fullness, not a test of your worth. When you act from that place, you naturally generate the kind of respect and fascination that lasts long after the physical experience ends. Now let's go deeper into what truly happens in the male mind in the hours after intimacy. You've learned about the biological drop in dopamine and the spike in prolactin. You've understood the importance of emotional autonomy. But what's even more fascinating is the unconscious archiving process. A sort of mental filing system that silently shapes how he feels about you afterwards. I call this process emotional archiving because, like a librarian, his subconscious is putting everything that happened into folders. It's asking questions like, was this just physical pleasure? Or did it carry emotional meaning? Was this woman the same confident person she was before intimacy, or did she change? Does her presence enrich my life or drain it? This archiving does not happen in his conscious mind. He isn't sitting there analyzing you with a checklist. It happens automatically, guided by primitive instincts and reinforced by modern brain chemistry. Every gesture, every tone, every small signal you give after intimacy becomes part of this archive. If you stay calm and self-possessed, his mind classifies you as valuable and rare. If you become needy or change your personality, it quietly moves you to the folder marked predictable or loss of challenge. This is why those critical hours after intimacy matter far more than most women realize. Let me share the story of Monica. She came to me completely frustrated. Her relationships always started with fireworks, passion, compliments, constant contact. But after sex, everything cooled down. What am I doing wrong? She asked. We examined her behavior after intimacy and discovered that she transformed from an independent, lively woman into someone anxious for reassurance. She'd text repeatedly, fish for compliments, and cancel her plans just to be available. All of these behaviors sent a subconscious message. I've changed now that we've slept together. I gave her a simple but powerful exercise. After lovemaking, she was to ask herself, am I still the woman he was drawn to, or have I turned into someone else? This one question became her anchor. It reminded her to stay true to herself, to keep her rhythm of life, to resist the urge to fish for reassurance. Within weeks, she noticed men reacting differently, seeking her out instead of withdrawing. Why does this work? Because consistency and self-respect are profoundly attractive. When a man senses that your essence does not change after intimacy, it signals to his primitive brain that you are high value. It's like a rare artifact that remains valuable no matter how familiar it becomes. When you maintain your emotional center, you communicate. Without words, I am whole. I am complete. I choose you, but I do not need you to feel complete. This brings us to a subtle but crucial distinction, one that almost every woman I've worked with has needed to understand. It's the difference between emotional availability and neediness. Emotional availability means you can be affectionate, warm, and even vulnerable, but from a place of strength. Neediness means you're using affection and vulnerability to try to secure reassurance or control. After intimacy, this difference becomes glaringly obvious. Affection from fullness feels like a gentle invitation. Affection from fear feels like a demand. Warmth from strength feels like a gift. Warmth from insecurity feels like a test. Men don't always consciously recognize this, but their bodies and subconscious minds respond immediately. They lean in toward fullness. They pull back from fear. And this is not just a psychological quirk. It's tied to brain chemistry and evolutionary programming. The male brain evolved to value signs of independence and abundance, because those traits signal a partner who can survive and thrive. Neediness signals vulnerability and risk. Again, this is not about moral judgments. It's about ancient survival codes still running inside modern men. Consider the story of Alejandra. She had a long history of failed relationships where men withdrew after intimacy. When she understood this principle, she made a radical shift. After her next intimate experience, instead of clinging to the moment or seeking confirmation for the future, she simply enjoyed it and then returned to her everyday life. She didn't play games. She didn't act aloof. She just remained the same autonomous, vibrant woman she had been before. The results stunned her. "Doctor," she said, "for the first time, a man sought more closeness after sex instead of pulling away." She had discovered the power of genuine emotional autonomy, not as a performance, but as a way of living. This power also explains why some men cannot forget certain women even years later. It's what I call the marker of extraordinariness. When a woman preserves her autonomy, mystery, and self-respect after intimacy, she imprints herself in the male brain. His memory consolidates the experience as extraordinary. He doesn't just remember the pleasure. He remembers the challenge, the respect, and the sense of privilege. Neuroscience teaches us that emotionally intense experiences create what we call multimodal memory traces, stronger, richer imprints that last far longer than ordinary memories. When a man associates physical pleasure with admiration for a woman's independence, the trace is almost impossible to erase. This is why some women become unforgettable, not because of their looks or technique, but because of the emotional atmosphere they created. Think of it like a masterpiece painting. Many can copy the colors, but only the original carries the aura, the mystery, and the authenticity that makes it priceless. A woman who preserves her essence after intimacy becomes that original masterpiece in the male psyche. But let me emphasize something essential. This is not about manipulation. A manipulative woman plays it cool while secretly needing reassurance. An autonomous woman genuinely does not need it because she is grounded in her own life. The difference is energy. Men can sense it even if they can't articulate it. How do you develop that kind of autonomy? First, by strengthening your self-worth outside the bedroom. If your sense of value depends on male validation, you will always react from a place of lack after intimacy. Build a life so rich and interesting that no man, no matter how wonderful, can be your sole source of happiness. Second, learn to enjoy intimacy for its own sake, not as a way to force love or commitment. When you do that, your energy shifts completely. Here's a metaphor I often use with my patients. Imagine you are a high-quality exclusive restaurant. If after the meal you beg the guest to come back, offer them discounts, or call them repeatedly to ask if they liked it, what message do you send? That you doubt your own quality. But if after an extraordinary dining experience you simply remain the same confident, high-value place, the guest returns out of genuine desire, not obligation. It's exactly the same with intimacy. If after sex you remain the same valuable, interesting, and autonomous woman without seeking validation or changing your essence, a man returns not out of duty, but out of authentic attraction. Yet some women, in trying not to seem needy, swing too far to the other side. They become cold or distant. That is not the way either. True autonomy is warm, present, and loving, but not dependent. You can touch him, smile at him, or talk to him afterward, but not because you fear losing him. Do it because you want to, because it flows naturally, because it's a genuine expression of your inner abundance. There's a phrase I always repeat to my patients. The love you beg for is the love that loses its value. If your attitude after intimacy screams, "Please keep loving me," you send the wrong signal. If, however, your attitude says, "It was beautiful to share this with you and I remain a wonderful woman with or without you," you create respect and deepen desire. Male psychology has a fascinating paradox. Men want to feel important to you, but not indispensable. They want to feel chosen, not needed. Choosing comes from freedom. Needing comes from dependence. This subtle difference can change everything in your relationships. Sophia learned this lesson. After years of canceling her plans, just to wait for a man's call after intimacy, When she stopped doing that, when she went back to her yoga, her projects, her friends, men began to seek her company much more. "It's like magic," she said. "Since I stopped canceling my life for them, they want to be part of it." She had stumbled onto a fundamental truth. Men value what they cannot easily control. And it's not just about control. It's about dopamine, the brain's reward chemical. Dopamine spikes when rewards are unpredictable, when there's some degree of anticipation or challenge. If after intimacy you become a guaranteed reward, always available, always seeking validation, his dopamine response decreases. If you maintain your autonomy, your life and your mystery, his brain keeps categorizing you as a high-value reward. The key to all of this is authentic self-possession. When your life is full, when your sense of worth is stable, you can give affection without fear. You can enjoy intimacy without needing guarantees. And paradoxically, that's what creates the very connection you wanted all along, a connection based on mutual respect and genuine desire. As we continue, I will take you even deeper into the neurological and emotional factors that make some women unforgettable. You will see how the male brain stores and retrieves memories of intimacy, why it compares and why it returns again and again to the experiences that combined pleasure with admiration, respect, and mystery. Let's now move even further into the hidden world of the male mind after intimacy. We've explored the immediate biological reaction and the subconscious archiving. But what happens as hours pass and his nervous system returns to balance is just as revealing. Roughly 12 to 24 hours after intimacy, the male brain shifts from physical recovery into what I call emotional integration. This is the point at which feelings, memories, and evaluations solidify. His nervous system has calmed, his dopamine and prolactin have normalized, and his prefrontal cortex, responsible for reflection and meaning, starts to wake up again. This is when he begins to feel the emotional texture of the experience more deeply. Many women misinterpret the earlier phase, when he seems distant or sleepy, as indifference. In reality, it's simply a refractory period, a neurochemical reboot. The next day, when he sends a thoughtful message, acts more affectionate, or seeks you out, he's actually experiencing the emotions that had been incubating beneath the surface. But here's the catch. Whether that delayed emotional response blooms into closeness or cools into distance depends on the imprint you left immediately afterward. Think of it as planting seeds in the soil of his subconscious. The soil is fertile right after intimacy, but it needs the right seeds: autonomy, mystery, warmth without clinging, for the memory to grow in your favor. This delayed processing also explains why some men seem more romantic after a day or two rather than instantly. It's not hypocrisy or manipulation. It's biology and psychology working together. The male brain literally needs time and space to metabolize emotion. If you understand this, you won't panic during those quiet hours. You'll allow space without interpreting it as rejection. Now let's dive into why some women leave a permanent mark while others fade. It comes down to a very specific neurological phenomenon called enhanced memory consolidation. When a man experiences physical pleasure, combined with admiration and respect, for an autonomous woman, his amygdala and hippocampus, the brain's emotional memory centers, light up together. This synchrony creates a rich, multi-layered memory trace. It's not just she was attractive, or the sex was good, it's being with her made me feel alive, challenged, respected, curious. This cocktail of sensations and emotions produces a memory that is far harder to overwrite. Think of it as a tattoo on his neural pathways, rather than a temporary ink stamp. This is why beauty and technical skill alone rarely make a woman unforgettable. What imprints in the male psyche is the combination of physical pleasure with emotional uniqueness. If after intimacy you remain the same fascinating, autonomous woman you were before, if you don't fold yourself into someone needy or predictable, you become an anomaly. And anomalies command attention. The male brain evolved to notice and remember anomalies because they could signal opportunity or threat. In modern times, this translates into heightened fascination. Let me share Rosa's story. She came to me after a series of brief, intense relationships. She was beautiful, intelligent, and charming, but after intimacy, men drifted away. In therapy, she realized she had been changing her behavior dramatically once she slept with a man, becoming overly available, overly reassuring, trying to cement the relationship through constant contact. When she stopped doing that, when she preserved her mystery and independence, everything shifted. She told me later, "Doctor, I learned the key is to remain the same fascinating woman he fell in love with, not to become someone new after sex." Rosa had grasped something profound. Emotional consistency is an aphrodisiac. It tells his subconscious, this is not a conquest that ends with intimacy. This is an ongoing experience worth investing in. But remember, autonomy does not mean coldness. The difference is crucial. An autonomous woman is still tender, still capable of affection and presence, but she does not beg for validation. She enjoys the moment, but does not collapse into it. This subtle balance, warmth without dependence, is what his brain registers as extraordinary. Another key factor in making yourself unforgettable is the sense of personal growth you inspire in him. Men hold on to women who make them feel they are becoming better versions of themselves. This isn't about stroking his ego. It's about embodying values, interests, and a level of self-respect that naturally invites him to rise to meet you. When he feels admired but not indispensable, challenged but not belittled, his brain tags the experience as special rather than routine. Consider Carla, a successful manager who initially struggled with holding men's interest beyond the physical stage. We worked on what I call complete presence without dependence. She learned to be fully present during intimacy, truly enjoying it, but without letting it dictate her self-worth or her future mood. She didn't rush to label the relationship or to extract promises. Instead, she let the connection unfold organically. The result? Not only did she begin to hold men's interest long-term, but ex-partners sought her out again, wanting to recapture the experience they couldn't find elsewhere. Why? Because Carla had stopped radiating neediness disguised as love. She radiated genuine fullness, inviting sharing without clinging to permanence. Her energy became one of freedom and abundance, which his subconscious read as high value. Let's also address a common misunderstanding. Some women think they need to be difficult or unavailable to maintain a man's interest. But that approach is based on manipulation and fear. The truth is subtler and healthier. A valuable woman is warm but not needy, present but not clinging, loving but not dependent. She doesn't create artificial obstacles. She simply lives a rich life that no one man can monopolize. That natural fullness is far more compelling than any strategy. And there's another layer. Dopamine, the brain's reward chemical. Dopamine release is strongest with unpredictable rewards. If every interaction with you becomes automatic and guaranteed, his dopamine levels taper off. If you maintain a healthy degree of unpredictability, not in your character but in your availability because you have a full life, his brain stays stimulated. It keeps categorizing you as a high-value reward. This isn't a game. It's how our nervous systems are wired. When you naturally have your own projects, friendships, and passions, your availability fluctuates in an authentic way. That natural rhythm is far more attractive than forced scarcity. Now think about the opposite. If after intimacy you cancel your plans, hover by the phone, and adjust your life entirely around him, you become a guaranteed low-effort reward. His subconscious responds by reducing excitement. This doesn't make him a bad person. It's just how the brain's reward system adapts. Another important point is vulnerability. Vulnerability from strength is magnetic. Vulnerability from desperation is repelling. After intimacy, being able to share a moment of closeness, a gentle conversation, or a laugh is beautiful if it flows from inner abundance. But if it's a test or a plea for reassurance, it triggers retreat. When a man senses you are centered, capable of affection yet stable on your own, his primitive brain interprets you as a high-value partner. When he senses you are using affection to secure him, his primitive brain interprets it as pressure. These interpretations are not conscious but instinctive. Let's look at Isabel. She was a brilliant architect, confident in her career but fragile in love. After intimacy, she constantly sought reassurance. Was it good? Do you still like me? Are we okay? Her insecurity undermined the attraction she had built. I told her, in the office, you don't need constant reassurance that you're a good architect. Apply that certainty to your womanhood as well. When she did, men started seeking her after intimacy, not the other way around. She had transferred her professional confidence into her personal life, and the results were immediate. Ultimately, what you're creating after intimacy is an emotional atmosphere. You're showing him, at a subconscious level, what it feels like to be around you when vulnerability is at its peak. If that atmosphere is calm, abundant, and consistent, his brain classifies you as safe and desirable. If that atmosphere is anxious, demanding, or needy, his brain classifies you as risk. And here's the secret few people know. Men do not flee from love. They flee from neediness disguised as love. They do not turn away from true intimacy. They turn away from emotional dependence, pretending to be intimacy. When you love from your own abundance, without hidden agendas, you create an experience his subconscious will file under extraordinary. In his memory, this experience sits alongside moments of personal success or transcendence. It becomes a benchmark, something that elevated him, made him feel alive, and connected him to a woman who respects herself. That's why some ex-partners never forget you. It's not about manipulation. It's about authenticity paired with emotional freedom. To embody this, build your life so rich that intimacy is an expression of joy, not a strategy. Cultivate friends, passions, and projects that fill your days with meaning. Then, when you choose to share intimacy, you do so from fullness. That fullness is your power. As the hours after intimacy unfold, his brain is scanning. Did she stay the same? Did she keep her rhythm? Did she remain fascinating? Did she seem confident and at peace? Each of these questions is answered in the emotional tone you project without even trying. That's why your inner state, your self-relationship, is the real foundation of romantic success. Now that we understand the male brain's biological and emotional response after intimacy, let's examine the ultimate factor that makes some women unforgettable. The combination of authenticity, autonomy, and emotional consistency. This is what transforms ordinary encounters into experiences that men carry in their subconscious for years, sometimes for a lifetime. When a woman preserves her essence after intimacy, she creates what I call the indelible trace. This is more than memory. It's an emotional imprint that shapes his perception of her long-term. It's why some ex-partners never stop thinking about certain women, while others vanish from memory almost immediately. It's not about looks, technique, or fleeting charm. It's about emotional integrity paired with a life fully lived. Let's revisit the principle of emotional consistency. Men unconsciously evaluate. Did she remain the same woman after intimacy that she was before? Did she maintain her self-respect? Did she stay confident, playful, and interesting? Or did she suddenly become clingy, anxious, or emotionally altered? These subtle cues are cataloged in his subconscious and dictate future desire. Think about the stories you've heard of couples where a man seemed infatuated one night, only to pull away the next. Often, the difference lies in these moments of subtle behavioral change. The woman's internal state, her ability to remain anchored and autonomous, is more influential than any external factor. Consider the story of Esperanza, 53, divorced 3 times. She came to me believing all men were the same. Each relationship followed a painful pattern. Initial attraction, intimacy, and then withdrawal. Upon examination, we discovered that after every intimate encounter, Esperanza unconsciously shifted. From confident and self-assured, she became clingy, insecure, and overly attentive. Her behavior broadcasted dependence rather than fullness. I told her, "Your value as a woman does not change because you had sex. If you were valuable before, you remain valuable after. Sex is an expression of your fullness, not a test of your worth. Months later, she shared a life-changing revelation. For the first time, her partner sought her out even more after intimacy. She realized her previous patterns of desperation, not age or appearance, had driven men away. Esperanza had discovered the transformative power of true emotional autonomy. So how do you create that indelible trace? There are several key principles. First, preserve your emotional independence. No matter how intimate the encounter, your happiness and self-worth should remain anchored within you. Second, maintain your sense of mystery. Do not reveal all layers immediately. Allow parts of yourself to remain unexplored and fascinating. Third, embody authenticity. Men can sense feigned independence or forced coolness. True. Autonomy comes from living a life rich in self-respect, confidence, and passion. Another crucial element is positive cognitive dissonance. This occurs when you behave in ways that break his expectations in a positive way. He may unconsciously anticipate neediness, drama, or anxiety after intimacy. When you instead remain calm, confident, and emotionally consistent, his brain is surprised in a delightful way. This creates a lasting memory. Because the experience doesn't fit his automatic pattern, he wants to process it again and again. High-quality intermittent reinforcement also plays a role. This is not about being inconsistent or manipulative. It's about living a life so full that your attention and presence are genuine choices, not obligations. When a man experiences a woman who is predictably confident yet selectively engaged, he unconsciously learns that her company is a reward, not a given. This combination of consistency in character and unpredictability in availability is neurologically stimulating. Now let's talk about personal growth, the invisible magnetism that makes a woman unforgettable. Men hold on to women who inspire them to become better versions of themselves. This doesn't mean they need her approval or validation. It means her presence challenges and enriches them. It is the subtle effect of being around someone who embodies stability, self-respect, and inner fullness. Consider Carla, 45, a successful professional who struggled to keep men interested. We worked on her ability to remain fully present during intimacy without allowing it to dictate her self-worth. She cultivated a life filled with projects, friends, and passions. After applying these principles, she observed that not only did men maintain interest, but even past partners sought her out again. Her energy had changed. She no longer radiated neediness disguised as love, but genuine fullness that invited connection without pressure. It's important to recognize the difference between emotional availability and emotional neediness. Emotional availability means you can be tender, vulnerable, and loving from a place of strength. Neediness means seeking validation or reassurance to feel secure. Men instinctively detect this difference. After intimacy, it becomes a make or break. Factor in whether they see you as high value or as someone easily forgotten. Men also fall in love after intimacy, but differently from women. Women tend to fall in love with the emotional connection they project during the act. Men fall in love with the quality they perceive in her behavior afterward. Respect, autonomy, consistency, and selectivity are the foundation of this male form of attachment. If you show neediness or dependence, respect decreases. Without respect, there is no sustainable love, only guilt, pity, or habit. Neuroscience provides a fascinating insight here. When a man experiences a sexual encounter that is emotionally rich, respectful, and stimulating, the same areas of his brain are activated as when experiencing personal success or transcendence. He does not simply remember physical pleasure. He remembers having been part of an extraordinary experience that elevated him. Isabel, 49, an architect, provides a perfect example. She was highly confident in her professional life, but fragile in love. After intimacy, she would constantly seek reassurance, undermining the attraction she had already created. I reminded her that she didn't need validation for her professional achievements, so she didn't need it for her womanhood either. Once she internalized this, men began seeking her more, even after intimacy. Her internal state, previously fragile, now radiated autonomy. which her nervous system communicated to them subtly but powerfully. Let's discuss the paradox that holds the key to lasting attraction. Men are drawn to women who make them feel important without making them indispensable. Desired but not needed, admired but not controlled, loved but not possessed. When you can embody this balance, your presence becomes a neural reward, a memory that triggers dopamine, fascination and respect simultaneously. True emotional autonomy is also a buffer against emotional manipulation. Many women fall into the trap of thinking they must secure love or commitment through intimacy. But sex is not a contract. It is a gift of shared pleasure and connection. If you give it from fullness rather than need, the man unconsciously classifies you as high value. If you give it from desperation, the experience loses its positive imprint. This is why some women remain unforgettable. They combine emotional authenticity, autonomy, and consistency. They maintain a life full of meaning. They challenge and fascinate without forcing. They inspire without depending. These are the women whose presence lingers in the male subconscious long after the physical act ends. Ultimately, the secret to being unforgettable is simple in concept but profound in application. Your value does not change because of intimacy. Stay consistent, remain autonomous, live a rich and full life, and experience intimacy as a joyful expression of your inner abundance. When you do this, men do not just remember the sex, they remember you as a person whose presence enriched their life, whose energy challenged and delighted them, and whose essence remained constant even in moments of vulnerability. The women who leave indelible marks are those who radiate freedom, paired with authenticity. They show warmth without neediness, love without dependence, and curiosity without desperation. They maintain personal projects, friendships, and goals. They allow intimacy to be a shared experience rather than a tool for validation. And most importantly, they preserve themselves, their essence, their autonomy, their inner fullness before, during, and after intimacy. So remember this, men do not flee from love. They flee from need disguised as love. They do not avoid intimacy. They avoid dependence masquerading as connection. When a woman loves from her abundance, respects herself, and stays emotionally consistent, she leaves a lasting imprint on his mind. He remembers her not just as someone he was physically with, but as someone extraordinary, rare, and unforgettable. Sex should never define your worth. It should be an expression of your fullness. Your value is already complete, independent of how a man reacts. When you internalize this truth, you move from the exhausting patterns of chasing, clinging, or testing into a space of confidence, authenticity, and magnetic attraction. The women who remain unforgettable are those who embody freedom, autonomy, authenticity, and consistency. They are warm without being needy, loving without being dependent, and fascinating without being manipulative. They radiate value from the inside out, and it is precisely this combination, emotional integrity paired with self-possession, that ensures their presence is stored in the male brain as something extraordinary, unforgettable, and profoundly desired. Have you ever wondered what goes through a man's mind after intimacy? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your experiences and questions. Share this video with friends who could benefit from understanding male psychology and emotional dynamics in relationships. Subscribe and hit the bell to get more insights, tips, and real-life advice on love, relationships, and emotional intelligence. Don't miss our next video.